and we are looking forward to a more robust participation of the audience that is present in the room and those who are joining us via the World Wide Web this morning. So, ladies and gentlemen, I trust that if you are seated, that you would have gone through the registration process. And so we are ready to officially begin, and I'm going to ask us all to stand for the singing or the playing of the national anthem. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. And as is our custom in Jamaica and at this agency, we like to invoke the presence of the Almighty in whatever we do. And so this morning, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Dervon Dale Taylor, a manager at JCA, Information Services Division, to lead us in prayer this morning.
Let us pray. Lord of wisdom, we pray that you will bless this symposium panel discussion. Help us, God, as we discuss productive issues, that we will broaden our perspective. Help us to take the various ideas presented and to think of ways to flesh them out. If we do disagree, let it be, God, on content and not personality conflicts or power plays. Help us, God, to resolve any disputes gracefully, be creative problem solvers, and have great team spirit. Help us to find principles that we can all agree on and to put them in action. Father, we ask you to enlighten us as we meet together so we can have a clear understanding of the issues that will be presented and discussed here today. Give us clarity of purpose for this discussion, and that the objectives we should accomplish will be accomplished. These mercies we ask. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Taylor. Ladies and gentlemen, we have there are many adjectives that you could use to describe them, right? But I will use erudite panel this morning. And it's my pleasure to introduce them. And in introduction this morning, we're not going into their bio because I think all of them are well known. And we will start this morning with a lady that needs absolutely no introduction, the CEO and Commissioner of the Jamaica Customs Agency, Mrs. Velma Ricketts Walker. And sitting to her right is a fair lady, not just fair in terms of dress, but a beautiful lady. She is now the acting Deputy Commissioner in charge of the operations divisions at the Jamaica Customs Agency, Mrs. Selena Clark Graham. Over to the commissioner's left and my left, we have a gentleman that wears many, many, many caps, but for today's discussion, he's representing the PSOJ, the Subcommittee on Security and National Justice, and he is Lieutenant Commander George Overton. We also have with us this morning DSP Rohan Reed, representing MOCA. And if you know MOCA, they are a law enforcement agency that has taken the lead in dealing with some of the most challenging crime issues in Jamaica. And so this morning is our pleasure to have DSP Reed with us. Next to DSP Reed, a gentleman that needs no introduction as well, because if you Google him, I see hundreds of articles referring to him and referencing him. And you know you're important if you do a Google search and it doesn't say still searching, right? So ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the president of the Micro, Small, Medium, and Medium-Sized Enterprise Alliance, Mr. Donovan Wignall. And coming back closer to me, sitting beside Mrs. Clark Graham, is Mr. Cassell Dunkley, and he is the Director of Investigations at Jamaica Customs, and certainly someone who is on the front line in tackling the issues that we are about to discuss this morning. Welcome, Mr. Dunkley. And I have learned over the last few years in this organization that you can't do a lot without consulting legal, right? And so this morning is no exception. We're having this panel discussion, and certainly the legal perspective is very critical in that discussion. And so we have representing the Legal Affairs Division of the Jamaica Customs Agency, the Senior Director in charge of Legal Affairs, Ms. Hazel Edwards. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we have indicated, we're looking forward to a very robust discussion this morning. But before we get closer to those discussions, it is my pleasure to invite the Commissioner, Mrs. Velma Ricketts Walker, to bring remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremony. Kingsley, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure. I feel privileged. I was saying to one of the panelists, Mrs. Clark Graham, that when we have a function and we see persons turn up, show up for customs to discuss this critical topic, we are certainly appreciative of you for coming and sharing with us. It was raining, maybe still is, but nonetheless, you are here. And so I thank you so much, indeed. So let me go to my prepared script. Morning, morning, morning to everyone here, our heads of entities and persons representing heads of entities, our esteemed panelists, my team members, ladies and gentlemen, all. I thank you so much for accepting the invitation to be here today at the Jamaica Customs Agency's anti-corruption panel discussion being held under the theme, Combating Corruption, My Fight, Your Fight, Our Fight. A very strong theme, a very inclusive theme, a theme that represents a call to action a collective focus. Yes? And we know that the COVID-19 pandemic had put a pause on such a gathering. And so we are here again after that 2 years absence. At the Jamaica Customs Agency, anti-corruption measures remain at the forefront of our operations. And we are committed to implementing, maintaining, and enhancing anti-corruption initiatives in close cooperation with our partners locally, regionally, and internationally. And I repeat, in close cooperation with all of you, because we know we can't do it alone. And we are not going to fool ourselves, but we're going to do our best effort to ensure that we have strong and robust program to mitigate corruption and to continue to build integrity within our system. I believe the organizations gathered here to discuss anti-corruption strategies show our continued cooperation towards preventing and combating corruption, and also sends a very strong message to those involved in corruption that we are taking a unified approach in vigilantly combating it. The globalized economy has opened new and sophisticated pathways to financial and other transnational crimes. However, we stand resolute in our efforts to not only reduce, but to ultimately eradicate the monster of corruption as far as humanly possible. In this regard, and in line with our core values, the Jamaica Customs Agency has identified core areas of action to strengthen our efforts in combating corruption. These efforts are built on the principles of transparency, governance, and integrity. Practically, I want to share some of the anti-corruption initiatives that we have implemented over the last 3 years. In an effort to bolster our ability to tackle corruption and other illicit activities, the agency strengthened its relationship with other law enforcement partners. These strategic partnerships have done much to improve the agency's ability to combat corruption on all fronts. Transnational organized crimes have impacted the operations of customs. And so, with this in mind, the Jamaica Customs Agency has continued to work closely with our international partners, such as the US Customs and Border Protection, the UK Border Force, the Canadian Border Services, to improve our own internal capacities and capabilities to combat corruption. The agency also partnered with the World Customs Organization, WCO. Technically, in April of last year, under the Anti-Corruption and Integrity Promotion Program, ACIP. This partnership is significant because the World Customs Organization has within its scope various ranges of expertise that are in line with the agency's thrust towards adopting international best practices in all our activities. We also conducted a customs integrity perception survey, which was a critical initiative because it incorporated internal and external stakeholders and allowed us to get a comprehensive view of how the agency is viewed. We intend to use the acquired data to guide other anti-corruption measures slated to be rolled out over the next 2 years. On the matter of technology, the agency continues to use technologies to access data. The increased use of technology is a critical component in stemming corruption, both internally and external to the agency. We have seen greater transparency, accountability, and traceability resulting from access to real-time data, a direct benefit of digitalizing our processes. This has enabled advanced risk assessment for smart targeting and further intervention. The Jamaica Customs Agency will also be including additional advanced risk assessment capabilities with the deployment of new features to our customs management system, properly referred to as ASICUDA, allowing for ongoing assessment both at the manifest and declaration levels for both cargo and passenger. Also, integrating and electronic data exchange between customs, the border regulatory agencies, and other law enforcement agencies have yielded positive results and will improve with the further inclusion of technology to integrate scans with our electronic declaration processing system. The agency has been approved for the acquisition of 8 new modules to the existing ASICUDA system, which will improve services covering e-commerce cargo, integration with postal services, small and pleasure craft, processing, advanced passenger information, passenger name record, data, manifest selectivity, among others. Additionally, we have developed a draft whistleblowing procedural guideline to enhance our ability to retrieve information. This policy is now in its final stages. Similarly, we have established new channels that will help to enhance our ability to retrieve information from the general public. This is being done through our recently launched online public awareness campaign, because we believe quite strongly that an effective anti-corruption strategy must include all of you at all levels. The initiative supports our sensitization sessions held for over various stakeholders, including, of course, our customs brokers, in order to educate them on the matter of corruption and the role they play in removing existing vulnerabilities in the supply chain. So far, 2 sensitization sessions have been held, where we shared, among other things, the importance of screening and vetting practices to reduce incidences of corruption and other malpractices. We are aware that integrity and ethics are key pillars of any successful society. To this end, we have included in our strategic plan to also educate students at the primary level as well as high school and tertiary levels about the importance of Customs and the importance we play and placed on maintaining integrity in our operations. I am optimistic that our various entities will continue to lead by example in promoting integrity, safeguarding the rule of law, and protecting our citizens. I look forward to having an active discussion in our effort to combat corruption. This is my fight. This is also your fight. This is our fight. And I strongly believe that we will win. So thank you so much.
I was duly warned to keep it on. I can be a little bit rebellious at times, right? But thank you, Commissioner, for those remarks. And ladies and gentlemen, the Commission has laid the foundation certainly for the discussions this morning. And the theme this year about my fight, your fight, our fight speaks to the importance of collective responsibility in tackling the issue of corruption. And as I sat here and I listened to the Commission and I think about the Jamaican context and the global context in terms of corruption. And one of the things I certainly appreciate about the Jamaica Customs Agency over the last few years is that we have not shied away from the issue and the public discussion about corruption. Because the fact is, as a nation, a lot of us will listen to the pronouncements from the various NGOs and etc., locally and overseas, that speaks about the perception of corruption in Jamaica and that Jamaica is seen as a highly corrupt nation. And the institutions within government and within the private sector struggle with that issue as well. And we have acknowledged at JCA that the only way to tackle it is to put it out there and to discuss it and to come up with strategies and to implement the strategies and to let the public know what we are doing. And so certainly, Commissioner, we appreciate that leadership and that direction at JCA in terms of how we are tackling. So, Commissioner, kudos to you and the team. But this morning, I want to start the panel discussion off by asking our panelists certainly to give their opening remarks, and in giving those opening remarks, to consider speaking on the impact of corruption within the sphere where they operate. And so if we can take it from that vantage point, starting from my extreme left with Mr. Wignall, and then we can move it along. And certainly anything else you want to add in terms of your opening remarks is certainly welcome, and then we'll take the discussions from there. Mr. Wignall?
Hola, hearing me now? All right, so the impact of corruption. I did prepare a little preamble, but...
That's fine, if you have a preamble.
No, I'm taking it from your lead, the impact of corruption.
Right,
I think it's not lost on anybody that corruption does a disservice to the incorrupt, meaning that it unlevels the playing field. So and I'm speaking from my point of view, dealing with clients in the industry and their feedback based on what they think at times, not now, but over time. In that, if they're going through the motions of doing what they ought to do, what is prescribed for them to do, and somebody else is getting through and getting through at a at lower cost, not doing what they ought to, then it unlevels the playing field and puts them out of business. Now, over time, the Customs Department, rightly said by the Commissioner, has put in measures to mitigate, to reduce corruption. I think the technology has gone an extremely far way in mitigating corruption, in that the human element, the discretionary elements have been lessened. And as far as leveling the playing field concerned, it did serve the introduction of technology, the introduction of ASICUDA, the introduction of J-SWIFT, the introduction of PCS has served in a large way to somewhat level the playing field. As I said earlier in my comments to one of the guests here, is that you'll never eliminate corruption, but you certainly can do a lot to minimize it. It has been before us and it will continue after us, but measures that we put in, whatever we implement over time, especially with technology, will serve to, one, level the playing field, reduce corruption, and of course, provides an easier way and an easier route to the path of doing what one ought to do at the advantage of their business. So, Kingsley, I think the most unfortunate thing with corruption is that it causes the playing field not to be level, and those who play by the rules actually get shafted.
And thank you, Mr. Wignall. I appreciate you pointing that out, because certainly in the discussion this morning, sometimes we speak about corruption and it becomes an abstract discussion,
yes.
Right? And it's important to focus on who loses, right, when corruption is present. So thank you for those opening remarks. DSB?
Mic check. Good morning, everyone. All right, just to support my colleague to my left, the war against corruption is certainly not a war that we'll ever win. That's a reality that I have come to face. I've been on many courses, many forums where the issue of corruption has been discussed. And I always give thought that, with all these different conventions and all these different laws, all these different policies that have been implemented and designed to deal with it, we still seem not to be able to subdue it. And I've come to understand that it is something that we'll have to live with, but we'll just have to find a way to manage it. You can't escape from it, because it involves the human element, and that's a reality. I'm somebody that always like to reference scriptures. If you check it from the beginning of creation, man's nature has been corrupted, and there's that tendency just to go that way. And corruption has negatively affected societies, economies. We have the records to show for that. We look at the educational institutions, the different ways, that corruption infiltrates institutions. So a teacher may have the curriculum that they are supposed to teach the student at school, and instead of teaching from the curriculum, that is differ for private lesson or extra lessons. And so that has an impact on the ability of the parents who may be at the lower scale of the economy scale. They have to find that extra money to pay for that class that should have been taught. You talk about the health sector and the different sectors that are impacted. And at the end of the day, it's the masses that really are impacted negatively. So our health sector, in terms of the quality of service that we should be getting from the health facilities, the quality of education that we should be getting from the educational institutions, the quality of service that we look for from our law enforcement entities, all of this is compromised because of corruption. The question is, what do we do or continue to do to try to manage or to mitigate, as it was said earlier, is from my perspective, is that, from a MOCA perspective, is that we will continue to investigate, we'll continue to bring the matters before the court, and of course, one of the crucial things, having had the opportunity to watch a video yesterday from the last session that you had, is the education drive. I think more than anything, we need to educate and start it from the kindergarten level coming up, showing them the negative impact that corruption will have. And I believe that if we push on the education campaign just as we are having now in this sort of setting, then we will begin to get back on the right path. We will not fix all, but to some extent it will lessen the negative impact that we are experiencing. And so those would be my few words at this time.
Thank you, DSP Reed. And certainly based on your comment, we can accept that corruption is a societal issue, it's a Jamaican issue, and it's impossible to take Jamaica Customs out of the society. So we must deal with, from what you're saying, the wider societal issue and address those root causes. So thank you for those opening comments. Lieutenant Commander George Overton, you sit and represent one of the largest organizations in Jamaica in terms of breadth and reach. And so I am interested to hear certainly your opening remarks in relation to the issues being discussed.
Disclosing my technical domain.
Is that
now? You hearing me? Okay. First of all, I'd like to open by congratulating the Jamaica Customs Agency on putting on this forum, a very relevant and a very necessary forum dealing with corruption in our society. The theme, my fight, your fight, our fight. You know, the problems that we face in our country is not isolated to any one agency or any one individual, because it impacts all of us. Corruption is something that exists all over the world. Our societies are made up of various types of people. Those who always want to deviate and corrupt a process. Those who will easily and willingly facilitate the corruption of the process. And then there are the rest of us who abide by the laws, the processes, and policies. In Jamaica, there's a significant portion of our society that believe that you can't get something done unless you have somebody inside to do a thing for you. And that, I believe, stems from circumstances where processes are slow, processes are bureaucratic, and processes are not transparent. As the Commissioner said in her opening remarks, that education is one of the things that they are focusing on in educating the citizens of Jamaica as to what their processes are, how the systems work. We need to eliminate that belief that you need to have somebody on the inside to do a thing. Certainly, the impact of corruption within the customs environment, as Donovan said in his opening, tends to unlevel the play field for our entrepreneurs. If somebody deviates the process and is able to bring that same product to market significantly less because they have bypassed the process, then we see the inequity and eventually we see the loss of participants in that marketplace. So it is very important that we deal with it, we educate our people, and we constantly review our processes. One of the things that I have always said, and any agency, any activity, once you see delays, you see backlogs, you see bungling, it opens the door of opportunity for corruption. And therefore, it is important. And whilst I say it's important, I commend the Customs Agency, because every time I have an interaction with the Customs Agency, it is an improved experience. And therefore, we must continue that drive across all our public sector agencies, constantly review our processes, constantly review the outcomes, and ensure that we are working efficiently, in a timely manner, and certainly eliminating the need for people to deviate the process and introduce corruption to it. How we deal with it, you know, I recently watched a video that was circulated on social media, and it was speaking to Singapore. And we in Jamaica like to compare ourselves to Singapore because Lee Kuan Yew visited us before he took on his mission to making Singapore a great place. And we believe that we may have missed the boat because he did a lot of what we should have done. But certainly one of the things that Lee Kuan Yew said is that to eliminate corruption, you have to start at the top. You identify where it is being breached at the top of your society, and that deal with it properly, and that will filter down to the bottom of your society, that everybody will toe the line. And certainly I believe if we embark on it this way, that certainly we can eliminate or significantly reduce the impact of corruption in our society. I close there, sir.
Thank you, Lieutenant Commander, for those remarks. And that has shown the spotlight. And when you, in fact, and true, when you read about literature about how you tackle corruption, you know, there's a lot of emphasis placed on the importance of leadership and governance. And when you talk about leadership and governance, you're talking about people at the top, right? The people at the top within agencies, within the private sector, within governments, and the importance of them setting the tone in terms of what is acceptable within society. So certainly, thank you for those comments. Commissioner, I know you gave your opening remarks, but the floor is yours to add anything that you so desire for the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Kingsley. I certainly concur with all what was said from the panelists that spoke earlier. What resonates with me is driving efficiency. When you look at processes, you have to ensure that the window for, and I put opportunity in quotation, for corruption is minimized. And I'm an advocate for automation because what I've noticed is that it allows that visibility, especially when you do the automation right, when you're able to track and trace, when there's the audit trail, there's a timestamp, and the information or the data cannot be overwritten, right? So there's always that trail. But persons are continuously smart and getting smarter. And for them, the corruptors, the corruptees, their aim is to continue to beat the system. And so you have to be like the persons who do the penetration testing, or though in the ICT world where you do, you know, legal hacking of your system. So you have to always test and see where the opportunities lies for those corruptors and ensure that you're a step ahead of them. Vetting is, you know, we find that we constantly are vetting our personnel. And it is not a panacea. We have to ensure that we are putting in other systems to, you know, help us in that realm. It is sad that moral suasion alone is not it. I think the hearts and minds of men have turned in a way that it is not healthy for our society. You know, our first panelist mentioned about the biblical scriptures. I know it started from then. But we must, as a society, want the best for our country. You know, as I always say to my team members, the moment we look away and not do the job that we are paid to do, then we are creating problems. Because it can be that that shipment represents guns. A one bullet represents a life. And, you know, we just have to care more and do the best and do it with the integrity that it so deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And certainly, your last comment about how we as officials operate within the system and understanding the implication of our actions go back to the theme about taking personal responsibility. So it's not about the amount of money that you get. So you may get the money for doing what you're doing, but what is the wider implication? And the challenge is to get the corruptors and the corruptees to understand that. But you have pointed out that where that understanding won't come, the systems must work as much as possible to prevent that. So I appreciate those comments. Deputy Commissioner, you have been you have been almost in every area of customs, right? And in terms of knowledge, I think there are few who has the knowledge base that you have within the organization. So I'm interested to hear your perspective in terms of what you see the challenges are and how we going to stack up and face those.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. Good morning, everyone. The Operations Division of the Jamaica Customs Agency consists of over 840 staff, and that's the division that I operate. And we are, as you are aware, responsible for facilitating trade, the speedy processing of passengers, legitimate cargo for import, export, transshipment, and ensuring compliance with the regulatory requirements and procedures that are established in order for us to collect the revenue that is due. The theme, combating corruption, my fight, your fight, our fight, is quite appropriate for me and indicates the Jamaica Customs Agency's commitment in breaking the back of corruption. And the theme suggests that corruption is really everybody's business. There can be no corruption without a corruptor and a corruptee. Commissioner, you use my words. Therefore, the question is, where do we fall? There needs to be an introspection by all concerned, those involved in importation, exportation, or those generally doing business with customs. They should all engage in being very upstanding citizens and understand that corruption starts and ends with the man in the mirror. Is it the accountant or the IT personnel or anyone with the requisite expertise who will replicate an invoice to distort the original values given by the supplier in order to pay less to customs? Is it the consolidator who declares less than what is contained in the shipment with the intention of deceiving the customs authority? Yet this saving from customs duties and taxes, Commander Overton alluded to it, is not transferred to the consumer, resulting in that individual or company making a supernormal profit all through corrupt means. Is it the customs broker whose instinct and expertise tells him or her that something is not right with a request for the clearance of a shipment? The invoice just does not look right, yet you fail to bring to the attention of customs that matter so that customs can act appropriately. Could it also be the customs officials who are the gatekeepers at the border? Choose not to be part of this fight and turn a blind eye to the glaring attempts to defraud the government of valuable revenue. These customs officials compromise the security of the country by participating in the corruption without counting the cost of putting their own lives or that of their families on the line and compromise their own personal integrity. Participation in corruption therefore undermines the economic security of the country, since losses in revenue reduces the capacity of the government to improve the infrastructure of the country, the healthcare system, the penal institution, the justice systems, to pay us better wages as customs officials, to pay the public servants better, to pay the teachers better. So corruption affects the entire process. What then will be our response? It must be a response with an affirmative commitment to speak out, whether openly or covertly, against issues of corruption that we are aware of. The general comment of not having anybody to trust cannot be our response. It ought not to be our response, given that the impact of corruption is so great. So you can find someone in the Jamaica Customs Agency to bring to their attention an issue of corruption. Someone in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, someone in the custom brokers fraternity, in the shipping industry. This fight belongs to all of us. We can implement the best system, we can put in place the best processes, but until we get our people, the people who are behind the system, to understand the impact of corruption, we will not break the back. This corruption business is my fight, your fight, and all of us fight. Thank you very much.
Well said, Mrs. Clark Graham. Well said. So, you know, we have a nothing wrong culture, don't it? All right? And so we really have to tackle that nothing wrong. All right? So Mr. Dunkley, I see you're enjoying a moment with Ms. Edwards over there. We're interested to hear from you as someone who is working on the side. So usually you're coming in at the point where you are finding and dealing with the issues when they arise. And certainly based on your work, you would have also have made recommendations for improvements in systems. But I'm interested to hear, and the audience I'm sure is interested to hear, as the chief investigator at Jamaica Customs Agency, what is your perspective on corruption?
Thank you very much, Kingsley, and to my fellow colleagues, Madam Commissioner, all gathered here this morning. I'm very strategically placed in the agency to look at the 5 W's and the 1 H of investigation. And I listened to Commander, and he ends where the World Customs Organization, in coming up with the revised Arusha Declaration, speak of the whole aspect of anti-corruption policies and measures that customs ought to employ in their everyday action. And some of the principles outlined, they start with leadership. It speaks to governance and all of those things. And it helps in stemming the flow of corruption. One of our panelists said there is no person we can't get rid of corruption, we can only minimize. However, the investigation unit do not seek to stop the flow of trade, facilitating trade. However, because of the elements of corruption, it stifles the growth and development of a country. And if we are embarked on developing our country, then this is, and I love the theme, this is a fight that all of us will have to put shoulder together and hold hands. And we can't say it's not my business, it's yours. And we can't, long ago, we can't fight over turf. And sometimes in organizations, you have this turf because someone wants the accolades. They think that we are up against corruption is an organized thing. And it's an organized crime. And it was just a few days ago, my daughter said to me, we would stop speaking. And she said, Daddy, even the pickpocket is an organized crime because he has to organize in his head how he's going to pick the pocket. I never looked at organized crime in such a way. But then when she brought that to me, I said, you know, you're correct. It is a crime is organized. And once we speak about corruption, there is crime. And it, as I said before, it stifles any government and any entity. And I think in economics, they speak about offer and acceptance. And before you can create a business or do something, you have to have somebody offering. And then you have to have someone accepting. And so we persons sometimes seek to develop themselves. It's not me. It's them. And we point fingers. We have to work together to combat this monster among our country. It is worldwide. However, we have to focus strategically on our country. And hence the investigation unit don't try to find the facts or the truth. That is what we aim to get to, and let the chip fall where they may. However, we also look at areas of vulnerabilities that we may not bring someone to the court, but when we look at what has caused someone to have attempt, then there must be an area of vulnerability, and then we strive, we investigate to plug that area. Hence, it is imperative, and I love the trust that our commissioner, the road that she's going on in the business processes, let documents speaks, because they will always leave a footprints. And when the whole thing, I was taught by Clay and Marsh to ask where the money comes from. And so once you speak about corruption, there is money involved, there is drugs, there is gun, and the detriment of people's lives. And sometimes they are dead whilst walking. And I'm not speaking about the movie Walking Dead, because some persons are mentally dead and they are still walking, all because of some corrupt practices. And hence, we have to go beyond, and we have to put our shoulder to the wheel. And so for my stakeholders, that when we are investigating, we don't want to stop your business because it's a lifeblood. However, we have to operate within the scope of the law. Hence, I end there so my colleague can pick up.
Thank you, Mr. Dunkley. And certainly I'm sure we want to hear some more from you, you know, about situations that you may have come across. But you made an important point about investigations conducted at JCA about any fraud, etc., or crime relating to cross-border movements of goods. That is not, the aim is not to lock down people. The aim is to ensure that the systems and the loopholes are fixed, but at the same time, accountability is important when things like that happen. And Ms. Edwards, I am going to make it easy for you. Right? I am interested in, and I'm sure the audience is interested in, and we know we have audience out there on the World Wide Web, and we have not forgotten you, right? So we're coming to you. We have seen some of the comments online, and after Ms. Edwards has had her input, then I will come and engage with our online viewers. So Ms. Edwards, one of the things I would like to find out certainly is, what is the legal landscape like when it comes to tackling corruption issues, whether within the JCA or within the Jamaican context? How does that legal landscape look? Is it something that is workable? Is it something that needs fixing? Is it being effective? Does it have teeth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning again, everyone. The key thing, or one of the key things, in addition to all the things that the other members of the panel alluded to, is the fact that actions must have consequences. And oftentimes in Jamaica, we talk about Singapore, and we use it as an example of where Jamaica would like to be. We talk about how Singapore appears to be free of corruption. We talk about Singapore's economic success. But very rarely do we talk about the consequences that accompany actions in Singapore. Mm-hmm. And that is something that we need to talk very seriously about in Jamaica. If persons are engaged in acts of corruption, there must be effective and forceful prosecution. And prosecution without fear or favor. And it means that if persons at the top are engaged in those actions, then they should be prosecuted. Jamaica Customs and the GOJ, on the whole, has a number of tools at its disposal. One of those is the ability to exchange information with other GOJ partners. Customs has been utilizing this in terms of entering into a number of partnerships with other GOJ entities. Because oftentimes where there's acts of corruption, there's money. And if you follow the money trail, you'll find the actors. And so we have entered into agreements with the Financial Investigations Division. We have arrangements with Tax Administration Jamaica. If the Integrity Commission requests information of us, we provide it. Because government has the information. What we have not been doing effectively is sharing it and analyzing it and looking at it together in order to find those persons who are engaged in acts of corruption. The other thing that we must be prepared to do, and it is often uncomfortable, is to look within. Other members of the panel have alluded to it. There can be no corruption within Jamaica Customs Agency unless our colleagues are engaged in acts of corruption. And it means, therefore, that we must be prepared to pursue disciplinary proceedings when our colleagues have failed to comply with the established procedures. Now, of course, to be fair, we cannot pursue disciplinary proceedings unless we ensure that the procedures are clear and known to all. And that is why in recent times, Jamaica Customs has expended a lot of resources, both in human resources and time, in looking at our standard operating procedures, ensuring that those are well developed, they're clear, they're published, that every single officer within the agency knows what the SOPs are. What it means is that if you deviate from the SOP without authorization, you will face disciplinary proceedings. And in the past few years, that is something that we've been working on assiduously, and our efforts in relation to that will be enhanced going forward. Because the fact is, oftentimes we know when our colleagues are acting inappropriately. And unless there are sanctions, we will always continue to behave with impunity. We also often talk about two actors in corruption. We talk about a corruptor and we talk about a corruptee. But there's a third person. It's the person who knows and who looks the other way, who says, I'm not getting involved. I'm not going to say anything and get myself in trouble. It's not my business. People in the power, them know. It's them friend, right? And sometimes there's legitimate fear because we all know we have an informer for dead culture, right? And so there's a sense that if I talk, then, my colleague, for example, if it's a colleague within the agency, they may have other persons who may protect them. If it's somebody on the outside, oh, this person is really powerful, this person will get me fired, and so on. So we have to fill that gap. And the only way we're going to be able to fill that gap is we must provide safe spaces in which persons can provide information to those persons who are investigating and to legal in order for us to work alongside the JCF or the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions in order to prosecute, or for us to pursue the disciplinary proceedings within. And that is why the guidelines in relation to the Protected Disclosures Act that the Commissioner alluded to is so critical. And that's why the agency is investing time and resources in ensuring that we have those mechanisms in place. If actions don't have consequences, we will continue to behave as though it's business as usual. But that time needs to change.
Well said, Ms. Edwards. And thank you, audience, for showing some appreciation for the comments being made by our panelists. And I'm going to ring it home. I think I'm going to use it a little more throughout the panel discussion. Actions must have consequences, right? And you realize that the discussion has stretched from addressing the issues in terms of the impact of corruption, looking at strategies to mitigate those, prevent corrupt practices. And I think Ms. Edwards took it to the point that when the practices do occur, what are the consequences, all right? So I don't want to ignore those who are joining us via the World Wide Web. And I just want to note a couple comments from our online viewers. Matthew Smith-Bart notes that I disagree even in the fastest systems, and he's disagreeing about the importance of systems and systems preventing corruption, because he's noting that even the fastest system persons simply want to act corruptly. And that could be a whole debate for a whole day in terms of what motivates somebody to be corrupt. And it's something that I've often thought about is, there are people who are corrupt because that's just their nature, right? There are others who are corrupt because they can't get away with it, right? So there are many people in the society who would not be corrupt if they couldn't get away with it, right? And there are some people, you're correct, who, boy, no matter what you do, you know, they're going to go down that path. So another comment is from Dwayne Brown, and he says, there may be some apples that are just bad, however. However, I am of the view that once an effective and efficient system is established, corruption will be significantly reduced. And that is the point. So we're not going to eliminate corruption. But it takes me back to a point that DSP was making, that corruption is everywhere, you know. But I don't want us ever to get to the point that we say that it is acceptable, right? Because when we say that it's acceptable, then the question comes, what level is acceptable, right? What level? How do we decide what it is that we will accept? So is it okay to look this way because the value of the item is $6,500, or is it $100,000? And so our public persona and our approach and our policy and our actions must say that it's a zero tolerance towards corruption. We know we can never fully get rid of it, but we should have a culture that says we will not accept it. So one of the things I want to rally back on, so to speak, right, is this issue of the nexus between corruption and organized crime. And I think DSP is perfectly sitting somewhere where he can answer that, because I think a lot of times within organizations, within the government, within JCA, that those who are involved in corrupt practices, those who turn the blind eye, don't think about it beyond the exchange of money and favor for an action. And so DSP, if you could tell us from your experience and paint a picture of how corruption is used as a tool within organized crime to fund other criminal activities, and paint that picture for our audience and our viewers.
All right. Nexus between organized crime and corruption. From my understanding and from where I sit, many of the actors that are involved in organized crime, they have that how should I put it now? They seek to bring about their influence to bear using their resources, the spoils from their illicit activities, And that is one of the reasons why I believe that one of the ways to cripple organized criminal network is to go after their illicit spoils, the monies. Because once you are able to get control of the monies, then you're able to break their ability to corrupt, as it were, because it is the money, it is the spoils from their criminal activities that they use to bring their influence to bear in the different spaces. And so the criminal actors, so like right now, the lottery scammers that we have out there, right? A lot of them, they drive around a large amount of cash in the cars. And the purpose for that really is if they are stopped by law enforcement who are, easily influenced corruptly, then they know that, well, listen, because we have been getting the information. These scammers are driving, they have illegal firearms because they want to protect, one, the monies that they are getting from the illicit activities, two, to protect themselves from other competitors in the criminal activities. And so what you find is that rogue elements from within law enforcement who may stop them and have encounters with them, they will offer the money, the rogue elements will collect the money, even allow them to leave with the illegal firearms. This is things that is coming to us. Yes, and so you see that corruption. And so one of the things that we as investigators, where we are, what we have been working on is that partnership between ourselves, FID, who is a key stakeholder, because they are the ones who do most of the back-end work in terms of the financials, so that we can trace the monies. As the Italians, from what I've learned, having been to some training with them, is that in dealing with the mafias, what they did was to focus on going after the money, following the money. Once you're able to follow the money, then you'll see who gets the money at the end. And when they get these resources from the criminal elements, then they use it to resource law enforcement to continue the cycle of the investigation and the process.
Thank you, DSP. I appreciate sharing of that knowledge. But ladies and gentlemen, we don't want to keep the discussion amongst ourselves up here, right? Because certainly this discussion will take us the entire day and beyond. And since we don't have that, we are working within a particular time frame. We want to hear from the audience, right? The audience here, we've heard from the audience online, and so we want to take your questions and your comments, and we want to start with I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his name, the CEO of the Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited. We'll start with him. He's better at pronouncing his name. I'm not going to fall into that trap this morning. All right, so we'll hear from you. Do we have a microphone on the floor? It is, right, the microphones, right, there are two microphones in the middle of the hall, and we have an assistant who is going to help us to move that around.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
So my name is Jędrzej Mierzewski. I know it's difficult, but life doesn't be too easy normally. So thank you very much. It's very interesting, and I'm most probably one of the few not Jamaican in this point here today, and it's a special occasion for that one. I was living in a few systems in many countries, but let me put it this way. I was born in most probably the most corrupted system you can ever imagine. Communist system in a communist Poland. It was many years ago. Then we have changed. We have changed in the 80s. And today, I would not say that there is no corruption, but it has been drastically reduced. So I've seen it. I've seen it, how it happened. But to give you a little bit more of context, during the communist times, the beating the system, the corruption was perceived publicly as a heroism, as an act of, national pride. And, those people in a home, in a society, on the streets, they were seen as heroes. people which you should follow from being 5, 6 years old. Then when the system changed, because you couldn't get anything without the corruption, and corruption was everywhere. You know, you name it, and there was a school, hospital, you never know, everywhere, because there was nothing available. Then the system changed. And slowly, it was a very difficult fight, but there were two main issues, I think, and it's already mentioned here. One is education. Education, just showing how wrong it is. It's public perception. When someone will have a stigma of the corrupt person, that someone will lose his friends, you know, because we know, everybody knows. Everybody knows that this guy had a new car or something and he is not earning enough and all this stuff. So the people around knows, most probably sometimes better than that one. But I think that one of the biggest issue or most successful things what has happened, it was that, first of all, that the punishment was quick and severe and unavoidable. You cannot avoid it. This knowledge that if you do something and you will get caught, it's important. That's one thing. Second was what they did on the beginning. It's not now, but when they started to fight corruption, they said, okay, the giver will not get penalty if he will show the person who took or force him to give money. So there were differences, because today it's different because both are treated the same. But on the beginning, they were said, no, if you are the one who are giving, right, and the person who accept, he was more penalized. So it works in a way. Third was, yes, follow the money. It's nothing new, follow money. But follow money, what has happened now? Most probably now Poland is one of the few countries that the majority of the transactions are done cashless. So it's practically, if I'm not mistaken, because I don't live in Poland for some time, but I believe the next year they will introduce no cash at all. So it happened three things immediately when it's done. First of all, you trace all those monies, but then they had this Added Value tax and all this stuff. All of a sudden, the government income just jump up immediately a lot, because it's not only we were talking about those corruption in a smaller scale, but there is a corruption on a huge scale, like the VAT falls, right? They were bringing tons of fuel, hectoliters of fuel to Poland, and they were saying, because it's a EU, so you can get to the other countries, they declared that it's for Germany or for whoever, when they were selling in Poland, when the government was losing a lot of VAT. So this also helped to close it down. So thank you very much, good luck, and I know that it could be successful, and I'm pretty sure that under your leadership, I'm looking forward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much from a non-Jamaican experience, corroborating the fact that education and consequences, right, Ms. Edwards, are important in addressing the issue of corruption. Thank you, and thank you so much for expressing the belief that this is a fight that we certainly can win. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open for additional questions for our panelists and additional comments. So if you have a question, the microphones are there, and you may indicate that you want to ask a question or make a comment, and I'm seeing the microphone making itself. And ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to introduce yourself and then go ahead, ask your question, and or make your comment.
Yeah, good morning. Siebert Mitchell, Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. I noted Lieutenant Commander Overton mentioning a top-down approach in treating with corruption. I also do take note that because our foreparents were not as educated as us, what you have found happening over time is that once you start teaching the children then the children are the ones who tend to educate their parents on certain issues. And it's for that reason, Commissioner, and I'm putting you on the spot now, that I rather like the idea of getting the issue of corruption into the school curriculum. I think it is not just a noble idea, I think it is innovative. I know it must have been tried in other jurisdictions. I don't know how successful it has been. But I would really love to know what are the detailed thoughts around the approach in treating with getting corruption issues being discussed in schools, retraining the minds as it relates to integrity issues, and having the children, I suppose, passing the information on to the adults who in turn will help us treating with this issue of corruption. So your thoughts on that, Commissioner, if the chairman will allow.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Commissioner, I certainly ask you to address that, and after you've addressed it, I think it's a question that I'm interested to hear from Mr. Wignall and Lieutenant Commander as well, in terms of their organization and their view on that approach, and if it is something that is being advocated for, and if not, then certainly what are their views in terms of advocacy towards having that included in the school curriculum. So, Commissioner.
All right, thank you so much. And so, thank you, Sir Siebert. You know, when it comes down to customs, I am not on many or any social media platform, and I must apologize. I am on LinkedIn, though, if anybody knows LinkedIn. Oh, yes. And I get a lot of inbox, if that's what you call it, persons requesting job at customs. And sometimes I say to myself, what is driving this desire to work in customs? And on the flip side, I say to myself, well, it could be that the reputation of customs, you know, is going in the direction that I want it to go. But it could be also for another reason. That person think that it's an era that you can come and you can make whatever type of money they believe you can make. When the team, and I must speak to the Internal Affairs Division of the Customs Agency, as well as our customer service team, we were looking at the reputation of customs and what image we want to demonstrate out there. And it was thought of that we need to take what we call an all-encompassing view. We talk a lot about our stakeholders, being the private sectors, the NGOs, the BRAs, but a lot of times we're not looking at the academia as well as all levels that falls within. And these are the persons who will be coming into the space to work, whether it's be for Jamaica Customs or any other entity. And so we wanted to ensure that we get that opportunity to speak to them, let them understand customs, let them understand the mandate of customs, and let them understand how you can impact positively with the work that we do. And over the years, we have been going to various seminars whether it may be, you know, career development, and we not only wait on the institutions to approach us, we approach them and say we'd like a session to engage with your population, with your constituents, i.e. the students of the various levels, to have that further conversation with them. I think also what needs to be, move aggressively is the mentoring as well. And to ensure that we are mentoring those students, have a proper mentorship program, that they are able to come in and we give them the guidance they so need. But importantly, because of the mandate of customs, you know, we speak about it. Sometimes we just gloss over it. We say border protection, revenue collection, trade facilitation. But when you speak to the border protection part of it, it is so significant. Seabird and Madge, the revenue is significant as well. But when you speak to the border protection, protecting people, protecting the citizens, protecting the country, we have to ensure that our population, all of Jamaica, is aware. And so, you know, coming back again to the civic duty, the civic pride, and to, you know, ensure that they all get it. And I've had the pleasure of engaging with students. I remember the last one, which was just a little in the COVID time. And we were sitting in the room. We brought them into customs, you know, giving them a tour and having a dialogue and conversation. And just to see how interested they were in that conversation. I go back to when I myself became knowledgeable of customs. And believe it or not, it was when I was doing my first degree. And it was macroeconomics, the literature, that referred to customs as an hindrance to trade. That was before I even came into customs. And I remember when I came to customs and being a part of the orientation and being trained as a customs officer, and was just in awe of the huge role, you know, that customs should play and plays, and wanted to just be a part of that, but also wanted to ensure that I too spread that positive message. And it starts with the children, and the opportunity is ours to just continue and to encourage that it becomes more permanent within the syllabus and curriculum of schools. So thank you, Seabird, for that question. And the work continues for us, and we look forward to also your support in pushing, you know, the education, the sensitization, the awareness of, you know, how we engage with our, you know, minds, the youth of Jamaica, and how we make them a part of progressing Jamaica. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I soon come to you, Ms. Cora and Sylvester, seen you. But Mr. Wignall and then Lieutenant Commander, on the issue of the approach to using education, if you could address that in terms of your association's view on that approach, and any other approach that you think might be useful in terms of that your associations can advocate for or get your members to participate in pushing that particular approach.
All right, so Kingsley, I start with the maxim. He that is faithful in small things will be just as faithful in the big things, bad or good. I think the education for corruption starts in the home and then transcends into the school. When a child does something wrong and the parent defends that child, that's the beginning of corruption. When you go to school and somebody even offer you a skip in the line where people were in the line long before and somebody give you a skip, that's another form of corruption, and that translates into the wider society, into businesses, into customs, into everywhere. I think one of the greatest deterrent to corruption is the idea that if I do something that is wrong, I'm going to get caught. And it comes back to what Hazel said about actions and consequences. And I think consequences are the best teachers. So if you teach in the school that if you do this, you're going to get caught. If it's wrong, you're going to get caught, and there are consequences to bear. And the proceeds of the corrupt act is going to be confiscated. Then you are actually forced to remain on the straight and narrow, because you're going to say to yourself, there's really no point in doing this because I'm going to get caught. My life is going to be miserable henceforth, so do what is right. So in terms of teaching, there's no better teacher than experience. So once the experience is such that you know that at the end of the day, this is not going to be a positive experience, then I will not do it. As far as my organization is concerned, and as far as I think by extension, other organizations and the population, Jamaica at large, I think teaching that to a population and having that experience being the standard will go a far way in stemming corruption.
Thank you, Mr. Wigner. And yes, I see somebody putting their hands together. You can do it a little bit louder, right? That is saying that you are in tune to what is being said and you are agreeing. Lieutenant Commander, any thoughts on the approach to education and how organizations such as the PSOJ can push it, whether from a national point of view in terms of changing the whole culture and the perception of corruption? What do you think?
No, certainly. I'd like to endorse what Donovan said, that it all begins at home. How we reinforce it in school is where there are different approaches that can be taken. I personally am of the opinion that we did ourselves a disservice many years ago when we removed civics from the curriculum of our schools. And I believe it was Siebert who talked about getting the children to understand and get them to educate the parents. I think that this is a golden opportunity for us to reintroduce civics in the school, get the children to understand how the society works, that when you corrupt the customs agency and deny the state of the revenue by way of corruption, what is the impact on the broader society? Why it is important for all of us to contribute to the tax coffers of the country for its own development and advancement. I don't think that our youth and certainly a generation of our society have that understanding of how it works. But the demands are made on the system because they expect the services, but they're not contributing to the services by complying with the various laws and processes. So I do believe that going to the schools, restoring the whole curriculum on civics, and enlightening the students on how the society works and how the various elements of government contribute to that whole mechanism to create the society that we want.
Thank you, Lieutenant Commander, for those comments. And I like the comment and the discussion about family and about what you said, Mr. Wiener, about what happened in the home and how we view it. Because my colleagues are sending me the conversation, the screenshots of the conversation online. And I see them highlight some nice conversation, but there's some understanding where we know how social media and society work. Not every comment online is a nice comment. And so I don't want to focus just on a nice comment. I want to focus on a comment that is not a nice comment. And it says, all you're talking about corruption, you're all corrupt. And so the question that I would have is going back to what Mr. Wigner is saying, that all of us, even the person who is making the comment, if you look at your own life and your own behavior, there are things that you do that you may not consider to be corruption, right? You skip the line in front of everybody that was there, and you at the stoplight, you go around everybody that was waiting. And so there's so many things that we do, but what the theme has called for this year is introspection, and not just the pointing our fingers to say, you are corrupt or you are corrupt. And one of the things that we have commended the organization on is this conversations about corruption. So we acknowledge that corruption is an issue. And this conversation is aimed at addressing that. And we can't address it without that conversation. So Ms. Koran, I come to you. And I think I am seeing Mr. Cook and anybody else over the side. Sometimes you can have tunnel vision, you know, the glasses kind of focus me. And then that table have a couple, and then we go to there's a couple comments from that table as well.
Good morning, good morning. I'm representing the Shipping Association of Jamaica, but this comment is personal and should not be held as a Shipping Association comment. I think that people would not make an effort to bypass the system if the revenue collection was looked at in a different way for our country. I think if we were not dependent on the revenue collection, things would be different. I know it's a complex thing because we need the money in various ways, but it then comes back to discipline. If we live in communities where people were paying their light bill, they were paying their water rate, if we were a more disciplined society, then there would not be such a dependency on the revenue collection. And you know, you listen to people talk about what, if you're importing something, the various layers and how difficult it is. And so that's why, you know, when they get a barrel, they're going to try and stuff everything in it, and it becomes such a pressure, because if they ship one thing as opposed to a whole barrel, it's different. So that's my view, that I think if we could look at the revenue collection in a different light, people wouldn't make the effort that they do to be corrupt with regards to customs. And this is to the commissioner. You know, you say that you get a lot of requests for jobs at customs, and you wonder why. I think that one of the reasons is that at the Caribbean Maritime University, it is one of the courses that students go into, and they feel, and it is being promoted there, that, you know, this is a career path that you can take. And, you know, just this forum, when they look at the panel and they see the people in customs, they think, well, I can be like these people one day. So, you know, you really should take a bow that it is a place of choice for employment. And, you know, maybe it has something to do with the uniform also, I don't know. But I think that is something that you should really be proud of, that there has been a shift in the way that customs is perceived. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sylvester. I appreciate those comments. All right? And certainly the issue surrounding the approach to revenue is something that we are conscious of, and I think a lot of the changes that are happening now and some changes that are coming in the future months, you'll see additional changes to the approach. But there's a wider discussion about duty rates and all of that kind of story that we're not going to touch on in this forum, right? There's a whole other discussion about, you know, those rates and how they impact on how people perceive and approach the issue of goods clearance and all of that. Still at that table, we'll go around that table, and then we go to the other table. Mr. Cook.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Clive Cook, President of the Custom Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association. Just want to start by commending the JCA for putting on this fitting forum, and do take note of the theme, you know, my fight, your fight, our fight, and happy to see that it actually started with my fight, and the JC actually putting itself out there, and it is really something, as someone who has been in this industry and has been interfacing with customs over 2 decades, I do think the JC should be proud of itself, and for those of us who are quite aware and have been working, would have seen the effort by the JC to really treat with this monster of corruption. And I listened to the commissioner speak earlier, and she was passionate, and I do know having to interface with her sometimes, and sometimes importers may have issues, fellow brokers may have issues, and you have to interface with her or the leadership. And the commissioner, while she's always willing to assist, she always take that time out to ensure that whatever decisions she may be making to assist is also always within the rules and the guidelines of the customs. I know it is something that she really seemed to have taken personally, this drive to address corruption at the agency. From our perspective as custom brokers, interestingly enough, we have a training coming up on September 24th, and the theme is also on ethics and integrity. We have reached out to the International Federation of Custom Brokers to assist us. We should be joined by the Secretary and Mr. Amy, who is at WCO. I think she would be known to the Commission, and this is something that we're looking towards. I do note of the comment made earlier by Mr. Henry, and it is one which in this industry, those kind of comments, you will get them. But believe me, I can say with 100% certainty that there have been great strides by the sector to deal with this, and it is one that JC should be happy and can be proud about. Also for us as custom brokers, Mrs. Graham spoke earlier about the custom brokers and using our experience to play our role. And it is one, and we have some guidance from the custom regulation, which actually states that as a custom broker, if you notice something and towards, you have an obligation to really say it to the importer. And if there's no action by them to address those situations, then you also have an obligation to bring it to the custom. So it is something that we have custom brokers have really taken on seriously also whenever we are admitting new members. It is something during the interview process, we deal with them, we follow up with them, and we ask them to liaise with the more established brokers for guidance, because we know that they are young, and we know the vulnerabilities in the industry. So I think as custom brokers, we continue to play our role. We're still a far way to go, but I think efforts are definitely being made to address this. Just a quick observation, Commissioner. The integrity perception survey you made mention when you spoke to us. I just wanted to ask if there was any lessons learned that you could probably share with the forum coming out of that survey. I thank you.
All right, so thanks for that question, Sir Coke. We actually just in this week received the analysis from the World Customs Organization, and we'll be going through that report to look at their findings and their recommendation, so that we can then have further discussion with the stakeholders who participated in the survey, and to look at the best direction for the agency as we continue to build out our anti-corruption strategies and build our integrity as well. So that is the long answer to say that we don't have that information yet to share, because I want a complete review. All right? But let me find out if my lead on that program, Ms. Tamika Goldburn, who is our Director for Internal Affairs, have anything to add in that area?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner. We would have partnered with the WCO in producing that survey, and the stage that we're currently at, we have received a final report, which is under review, and as such, we will share whatever data we can in order to collaboratively treat with certain matters that have been highlighted.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Goldburn. Thank you, Mr. Cook. So another comment from that table.
Just a short one. I'm missing one thing here in this discussion is a company roles. Me representing as a big companies, I would say that it's important role is laying on us, especially I would say we have a tendency to finger pointing, but we should start from ourselves, from CEOs, from a top management. It's our responsibility to drive the change of the company culture. It includes anti-corruption. It's not only this one, but it's also. So it's quite important that we as a companies, we as a management of companies, we demand a certain behavior. Yes. We acknowledge or punish wrongdoing. So there should be no mercy for anti-corruption or corruption act. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. And that is, it speaks to creating a governance culture where integrity is a core value in all the organizations, right? And that is how we're going to make the national change that is required. It must be something that we don't back away from, And Mr. Manan, we come into your table. Oh, there's another comment on that side. And as we get that comment, I just wanted to go back to that comment that was made online and to say to the public that is listening and to our audience, the reality is that the vast majority of officials within the Jamaica Customs Agency and within the government services are not corrupt people. They are people of integrity. But we do acknowledge that there are bad apples among us, right? But the collector, the senior director, Mrs. Graham, you have so many titles these days. The acting deputy commissioner spoke and stressed about what is your role. And so what we say to the people out there who are listening and who will hear this discussion after is when you have those interactions with customs or any other government entity that you feel is corrupt, how do you respond? Who do you report it to, right? Do you accept it? And one of the things that we are saying to people, don't accept it. Because the leadership of the organization is here, and we are saying that we don't accept it. So if it means that you need to reach out to the commissioner directly, or to the director of investigation, or to the senior director of legal, or to the deputy commissioner, then do that. But the day that you accept that corrupt interaction and you walk away, you lose your moral authority to then point finger and to say, all of you are corrupt. So I'll go to the comment from the table on the far right.
Morning, everyone. Thank you very much. A good segue into what I'm about to say. I'm Rocky Allen. I'm the president of the PSC AEO program. And again, like everybody else, I want to pause briefly to commend the Jamaica Customs Agency, because that program, the AEO program, is one such system that was built in to help to eliminate or reduce corruption. And trust me, as the president sitting where I sit, it has shown significant improvement in how we manage the process, especially when it comes to how we secure the supply chain. But I want to pause on something here that has been the theme going out. There's what I call the intangibles, and there's the tangible. And 90% of us can deal with the thing that we can see and touch easily. Mm-hmm. The one we can't deal with is the one that is mental and attitudinal. I was listening recently to a presentation by two former prime ministers, the Honorable P.J. Patterson, our most honorable, and the Honorable Bruce Gordon. And Mr. Gordon literally apologizes on behalf of the JLP to Mr. Patterson for the Values and Attitudes program that was launched years ago, which was politicized, which had value. Every one of us here can speak to that. Whether you talk about civics in school or whatever it is, that's what it comes down to. And let me say another thing. Battery?
We're hearing you. We're hearing you.
Let me say another thing. Every time I have an opportunity to presentation, whether by paid presentation or by voluntary presentation, I wonder if it's the same country that grew Marcus Mosiah Garvey and others like Paul Bogle that I'm living in. Because 99% of our problem is cowardice. We are afraid. Every one of us, if you're not careful, starting with me, not perfect, are afraid to take the appropriate actions. Because one, chances are you might be killed. Chances are you might be rid of a job. Chances are your family will be killed. And it's truth. But at the end of the day, if Bogle and others such as him were to take that same approach, we would still be in slavery. Harriet Truman once said, when the dogs are coming, run. When the bullets are firing, run to escape slavery. The common theme, and I hear it from my colleague from the PSOJ, which I happen to be a part of as the PSC president, is that if you, in a situation of leadership, and you can't stand up and be counted because you're intimidated, get out of there, you're in the wrong job. And too many of us, whether you're a parent, you're a teacher, or any supervisor at any level, NGO or otherwise, one of the comments from social media was to the point. They are looking at us and wonder if we are a bunch of hypocrites in here. Because some of us sitting right here are offering somebody something to get a benefit. So let me go back to the theme. Our national heroes are not there just for fun. Their lives were there to taught us to stand up and be bold. And when you see wrong, stand up and deal with it. It's going to have, they can't kill all of us one time.
It's true.
They cannot. What we have done is to allow the most of us who are less morally tuned to literally take over the society.
Yes.
And lastly, let me close with this. It's a comment I'm making. And I'm speaking not just personally, but also on behalf of the PSC. From our experience, the AO program has worked and is working. Most companies in here, if you're not yet registered, get on board. Because if you want to get your shipment in on time without stopping at custom to be stripped, every one of your containers, believe me, get certified. Get certified. Call me, call anybody on the podium from the custom department side, and if you're not yet there, we'll help you with the process. But ladies and gentlemen, pardon the pun. Well, not a pun, really. If you don't have the courage.
That's true.
Forget about the politics. If I don't go there this morning. Because we want power, we literally reduce our standard to get the power. And we get the power, we try to fix it after. It can't work. Hypocrisy, and people are seeing through that. So, if good people vacate the church, what do they end up in the church?
Bad.
If good people vacate custom, what do they end up in custom?
Bad people. Bad
people. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you. Well said, you know. Courage. Courage. We must have the courage of conviction, right? And we can't help but agree with that. So if we get up every day and we talk about tackling corruption and fighting crime and doing all that, then we must have the courage that is needed to do that. And you're correct. We're talking about the minority, and we are living in a society where the minority is ruling, because that seems to be the dominant force, which is the negative force within the society. Yes, Commissioner, you wanted to jump in on that.
Thank you so much. I needed to piggyback on what was said earlier as it relates to values and attitude. And just to share that the Jamaica Customs Agency is rolling out its values and attitude program. And we are using the values and attitude ambassador. One would know Reginald Budan. Right? So he would be the person to assist us with that program, because we have to move in a particular direction to assist not only ourselves, but each of us. We are a part of a family, whether we are sister, brother, mother, father, And so we use that opportunity to pull each other and to pull the society in the right direction. The next comment I would love to make is that Mr. Dunkley made mention of it in his remarks about leadership. Leading by example works. Yes, I have been committed to it since I started this role. And not that I wasn't doing it before, but I'm saying, you know, the role of Commissioner of Customs is not an easy one. Yes, you have persons coming at you from all angles. The power of the Commissioner of Customs is huge. And I find that even within my agency, persons will say, well, Commissioner, as long as you approve it, it's okay. But it's not necessarily okay if you're not following the letter of the law. And even within that, Ms. Edwards will speak about it. What are the rules? What is the justification that drive your decision? So it can't be that I feel like I need to make that decision. It must be justifiable and guided and rules-based. And so, you know, I know that the team sees it, and I know that they too are driving in that way. But we have more to go, right, in that direction. And your support is needed, because when you see anything, you know, when you have any issues, any concern, when you don't understand, because misunderstanding also creates the wrong perception, right? Then you reach out to us so that we can make the necessary corrective action to serve you better, to improve, and to build as it relates to our integrity, continue to build in that way, and our anti-corruption measures. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And ladies and gentlemen, the discussion has been going well, and as I did indicate, we wish we had an entire day, but we don't. So we're going to be taking a couple more comments from the audience, and then I'm going to come to my panelists. I think there are a couple more panelists up here that I want to hear from, and we will close out shortly. Mr. Manahan.
Okay. Thank you, Kingsley. And I must say to you that I'm going to make a comment as it relates to commissioners' input, where the schools are concerned, and Commander made mention of the home. So I'm going to give you a little story. When I was young, a little boy, trust me, Kingsley, I was really hungry. Hungry as hell. And I took 5 cents out of my mother's purse. Them time 5 cents enough money. Could I buy something to eat? And she found out that I took it. And let me tell you something. That lady beat me like a runaway slave. And you know what? When she, you know, back in them time when your parents are beat you, them talk to you. And she was saying something that I could not understand. And she was beating me and saying, the greatest crime that men have done has grown from small and distant spring. Is when me get old, me understand. You take 5 cents today, 10 cents tomorrow, 20 cents, then you start rob a bank. So it go back to, you know, the home and how you train the child. Is what I'm saying? So the small things that we ignore, you send your son or your daughter to Miss Mary for 1 pepper, and when Miss Mary not looking, they pick 2 and carry come give you. Give them back the pepper and say, carry it back or give Miss Mary's 1 I send you for. So I'm saying? So it all boils down to all of these little things that we ignore, and it becomes a big sword that we can't really handle it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manan. And I think there's a national recognition of that, because when you look at the approach, for example, at the JCF in these campaigns that they have, say they're clamping down on illegal vending and road traffic violation. So I think there's a national acknowledgement of that, but it's just, I think there needs to be a coordination and a national effort to move in that direction. Do we have any other comments, any other questions from the live audience? No. A comment from our online, and then I come back to the panelists on this side. CB Bar online says, the society has lost its compass, morals and values. These values are now frowned upon in the name of progression. The fight must be on all fronts. Proper vetting of personnel, systems, and spaces. And thank you, CB Bar. And I think I want to move over to that end of the discussion to Ms. Edwards, and to hear from you, whatever comment that you wanted to make, but also to take some final comments from you about, is there anything that we are doing, anything that is happening in terms of the customs legislation? Earlier you had said that there are enough tools, but does those tools include the Customs Act that is being repealed and replaced, or are those independent tools? And then I'll come to Mr. Dunkley, and I think I want to have a fair lady have the final comment on this year's panel discussion. Ms. Edwards.
Thank you, Kingsley. All right, so it's interesting that you read that comment, because one of the things that the person mentioned was about systems, and I heard some other persons talking about that. And that is one of the areas that the new customs legislation focuses on, ensuring that systems are in place to help us to combat corruption. Of course, we have a number of tools at our disposal now, but we can always take on board additional tools. So, for example, there was mention about the Authorized Economic Operator Program. And really, all that does is that it recognizes that persons may want to go into a fast lane. How can you get into the fast lane legitimately? Well, one way is through the AEO program. But the proposed new customs legislation also provides a framework for the commissioner to introduce a number of other certified statuses. So it is true, AEO, we could say it's the gold standard, but there may be certain expenses associated with the AEO, and a person may not be able to reach that standard. But nevertheless, they may be able to, qualify for another program, because it's important that when persons are complying with the customs laws, that they are rewarded, and those rewards should look like special facilitation, including, for example, expedited clearance and release times. So that is something that the legislation expressly contemplates. The new legislation also provides a mechanism by which persons can do what we call voluntary compliance relief. And what it simply means is, again, we're having a real conversation. We're acknowledging that corruption exists. We're acknowledging that sometimes persons fail to comply with the laws. But we also need to create a mechanism by which they can set things straight, as it were. So the legislation contemplates this voluntary compliance relief program, whereby if there has been a failure to make an accurate declaration to customs, there's been some sort of shenanigans happening, there's a mechanism by which you can make that declaration to customs.
Something is happening for someone in this country every single day as a result of the actions of this government. The beneficiary of this house and the hundreds of people who have benefited so far, they feel good and their families feel good.
Oh, I'm on top of the world. It's just a dream come true. Somebody see that me deserve it, and then brought it to life for me.
There was no schism, there was nothing there, and it was just, okay, you're in need, and I'm going to do whatever I can do to ensure that you're helped, because you're somebody that is in help. It renewed such a hope in me, wanted to be understood.
I thank the team, I thank everybody for this house.
We must take all steps to ensure that whoever is the beneficiary is genuinely in need and deserving of it.
Develop a sense of purpose that says you're not here by accident. You are here for greatness. You are here with destiny in mind. You are supposed to do something great, and you are on that pathway. There are persons who are in the departure lounge of life, at the end of their life, and they look back and they have regret because they never took time to uncover and develop a sense of purpose. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do before I leave this 7 billion people planet called Earth? What am I supposed to accomplish? Having a sense of greatness that's in you. You're talented, you have gifts and abilities. Some of you are good with numbers, some of you are good with words, some of you are good with both, some of you are artistic, creative, some of you are sports oriented, and there are many things. And you take time to discover what are you passionate about. What can I just do naturally? I can jump out of my sleep and do it easily. Speaking now to your talents and abilities, your giftings. All of these come into your sense of purpose. The things that you are to do in life as you are to impact people. When you dream, when you close your eyes, what do you see yourself doing? And knowing that the sky is the limit. Second thing I want to say quickly is that you must learn to persevere. I heard Marquis speak about perseverance. Everybody say perseverance. Sometimes we don't achieve much because we give up too easily. You have to learn, if you want good, your nose have to. Yes, man, you have to get your feelings hurt and still go on. When I was doing my PhD, boy, a man tell me, man, people seem to like you. Wayne, why don't you just leave this program and go back to your country? You have a master's. The PhD is not for you. Why don't go and make money? And that was a racist comment because I was black. I was the only black person in the program. And he was saying things that hurt me, and I didn't want him to see me offended. I left his presence, went into my room, and I cried. But I decided to continue in my effort for excellence. Are you hearing me? And so perseverance means to continue a course of action in spite of difficulty, in spite of opposition. When they fight you down, when bad mind reach you, and they're fighting you down, and they say you're not the right gender, young ladies, and they say you don't deserve to be here, don't pay no attention, press on nonetheless. And it means you also have to have the right people around you. Be careful of the company you keep. As you go through life, you're going to make mistakes. As you go through life, you may fail at something. You want people around you who can encourage you to get up again.
How do bills become law in Jamaica? Laws are made to create order, to ensure our safety, and to protect our rights against abuses by other citizens, organizations, and even the government itself. A bill is a proposal for either a new law or for a change to an existing law. Jamaica's parliament is responsible for making our laws, and that responsibility is shared between two houses. There are 21 parliamentarians appointed from both political parties to the upper house, also known as the Senate. And there are 63 members of parliament that we, the people, elect to the lower house, also known as the House of Representatives. To pass a law, there is a minimum of 6 stages required in each house. The process can begin in the upper house by a senator or in the lower house by your member of parliament. And their proposals for a new bill can certainly start with you, the citizen. Now, since the process often begins in the House of Representatives, let's start there. 1. The first stage begins with the introduction by the minister responsible for the bill, followed by the first reading of the bill by the clerk to the houses. This clerk is more like the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer for the Parliament. An announcement of the bill is published in the Gazette. This is a public newsletter that the government uses to inform the citizens of what the Parliament is doing on your behalf. 2. The second reading begins with a summary of the bill by the minister. The main reasons for the bill are discussed both by the government and opposition members to determine if Jamaicans would really be better off with the new law or changes to an existing law. a vote is taken by the House to determine if the bill will move to the committee stage. Sometimes before going to that stage, the minister responsible for the bill can recommend the use of a joint select committee. It's called joint as its members are taken from both the upper and lower house. To benefit from greater consultation, the committee is empowered to invite the public to share their views of the bill in writing or in person, and does so through radio, TV, and newspaper adverts. This Joint Select Committee submits its recommendations to the House of Representatives. The House debates this report, and a vote is taken to determine if the bill should go on to the committee stage, where it is examined by a committee of the whole House. Yes, that's the name. And that's what it is, a committee of all the members of Parliament that carefully examines each clause and makes improvements to ensure the bill will achieve its objectives. As chairman, the Speaker of the House monitors the process to make sure the rules of the House are obeyed and the process moves along smoothly. 4. The Committee of the whole House examines the bill clause by clause, then sends its recommendations for changes to the House of Representatives. This is called the report stage. 5. The bill then passes to the third reading to allow a final opportunity for MPs to make changes before it is sent to senators in the upper house. 6 to 10. In the upper house, the senators go through the same steps we just described. If any changes are made, the bill has to be returned to the House of Representatives for their discussion and approval. Now, if the bill had started in the upper house, it would also have to be returned to them for approval of any changes made by the lower house. 11. Throughout the entire process, the bill is being checked by the Legislative Council. That's the Parliament's lawyer. But before the last step, a copy is sent to the Attorney General of Jamaica for final review and certification. 12. If all is well, the bill is sent to receive the royal assent from the Governor General as the representative of the Queen, Elizabeth II. The bill is now an Act of Parliament. The Act is gazetted, and the rights of Jamaicans are further preserved and protected by a new law.